In the cold silence of deep space, a lone ship moved slowly between the stars. It was an old repair craft, painted dull gray, with scratches and dents from many years of use. Inside the ship, a man named Jaxon Reeve sat at the controls. He was a mechanic, not a soldier, not a pilot, just someone who fixed things that others broke. He was heading home after completing a long job at a remote space station. His ship was quiet, running on low power. He listened to soft music and chewed a protein bar when something unusual appeared on his radar. It was huge, far bigger than any ship he had ever seen. No shape, no clear edges, just a massive object floating in space. "What the hell is that?" Jaxon whispered, narrowing his eyes. He scanned the object again. No signal, no beacon, no lights. It didn't look like metal. It looked alive. His fingers hovered over the controls. He should have turned back, but curiosity was stronger than fear. He pushed his ship forward, closer to the strange object. As he approached, the lights on his control panel flickered. A low vibration ran through the hull. Something was wrong with the energy field around the ship. He tried to back off, but suddenly, the black shape began to move. Before he could react, the object opened up like a mouth. A massive, dark hole appeared in the center. Long, thin tendrils stretched out like tongues or teeth. Jaxon tried to steer away, shouting to himself, pressing buttons, but it was too late. The ship was pulled inside. Everything outside went black. There was no impact, no crash, just a strange feeling like falling underwater without sound. The ship drifted into the darkness. Jaxon held the controls tight, breathing fast, eyes wide. "Computer status," he shouted. No response. All systems were dead. Engines, lights, even the emergency comms. The only thing working was a dim red glow from the backup battery. He stood up, grabbed a flashlight from the wall and looked around. The ship's interior was shaking slightly, like it was inside a living stomach. The walls creaked. A thick slime began to slide across the view window. Jaxon realized what had happened. He had been swallowed. "This isn't a ship," he said. Quietly, "It's a creature." He took a deep breath and opened the side hatch. A small ramp lowered with a hiss. The air was warm, wet, and smelled like rotting metal and something else, something alive. He stepped outside, holding the flashlight. The floor beneath his boots felt soft and pulsing. The walls of the tunnel around him were fleshy and red, like the inside of a throat. He was deep inside a giant alien life form. He moved carefully, scanning the area. There were no signs of light, no sound except the slow, deep thump of a heartbeat, echoing through the flesh. Then he found something. It was a broken metal panel, half melted and covered in slime. Nearby was a piece of another ship, crushed and rotting. Jaxon crouched down and touched it. Other ships had been here before, swallowed, digested, forgotten. He stood up quickly. "I need to get out fast." He turned to head back to his ship but stopped. In the corner of his eye, he saw movement. At first he thought it was part of the alien flesh, but then he saw it clearly, a shadow crawling on the wall. Long arms, thin legs, no face. Something was moving toward him silently. He raised his flashlight. The creature froze. It looked like a skeleton wrapped in muscle. It had no eyes, just a smooth round head. It tilted, sniffing the air, then took a step closer. Jaxon backed away. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't have a weapon. All he had was his flashlight and a small welding torch. The creature opened its mouth and hissed. A high, painful sound filled the tunnel. Jaxon turned and ran. He slipped, fell, got back up, and sprinted down the fleshy path, heart pounding. Behind him, the shadow chased him fast, but Jaxon knew the way back. He had marked the path with small scratches in the flesh. Using his blade, he reached the ship just as the creature got close. He slammed the hatch shut and locked it. The creature slammed against the outer wall, screeching. Then it stopped. Silence again. Jaxon sat on the floor, shaking. He looked around his small ship, barely working, surrounded by flesh, trapped inside a living alien. No signals, no weapons, no backup. He was alone. He stood up slowly and whispered to himself, "If I don't fix this ship, I'm going to die in here." He opened his toolbox and got to work. Somewhere deep inside the creature, that strange heartbeat continued. But Jaxon Reeve, the human mechanic, was not ready to give up. Not yet. Jaxon Reeve didn't sleep. He couldn't. The walls of his ship groaned like they were breathing. Every few minutes a soft gurgling sound echoed through the flesh outside. The heartbeat of the creature surrounded him like a slow drum. He had managed to restart a small part of the ship's power using an emergency cell, but most systems were still offline. The engines were dead. The navigation controls were useless. Only one thing worked properly: his toolbox. Jaxon stood in the middle of the main deck and looked at the walls. Slime had started to leak through the cracks in the windows. It wasn't as it yet, but he knew it would be. He had read about things like this: massive organic creatures floating in deep space, living off starships like whales swallowing plankton. And now, he was inside one. He grabbed his flashlight and opened the hatch again. He had no choice but to go out there. If he stayed in the ship, the creature would slowly digest it. If he left, maybe he could find something, some clue, some broken part of another ship, anything to help him repair and escape. The air outside was warm and wet, Steam rose from the ground like breath. He took cautious steps into the red tunnel, his boots sticking slightly to the pulsing floor. He moved deeper into the beast's belly, following the same path where he had seen the shadow creature earlier. The thought made his skin crawl, but he pushed it aside. He needed to focus. Soon, he found it half buried in the flesh was a piece of another ship. It was old, maybe 5 or 10 years since it had been swallowed. The metal was torn and covered in layers of mucus, but some parts still looked usable. A battery cell, a sensor array, even a small plasma cutter. Jaxon smiled. Jackpot. He began pulling the parts out one by one, placing them into a sack he carried. He worked fast, but carefully, watching the walls. The alien tissue twitched. Each time he removed something, like it could feel the pain. Then he heard it, a soft skittering sound. He froze. The noise came again, closer this time, like claws tapping on metal. Slow, careful, hunting. He switched off the flashlight and crouched behind the wreckage. His heart thudded in his chest. From the corner of the tunnel, the shadow returned. It moved slowly, sniffing the air. Its long fingers scraped the walls. It stopped near the wreckage and crouched low. It had no eyes, but somehow, it knew he was near. Jaxon held his breath. The creature moved its head slightly. Then its hand reached toward the sack where he had kept the parts. Before it could touch it, Jaxon activated the plasma cutter. A thin stream of white light shot out, slicing a chunk of meat from the wall. The creature screamed and leapt back. Jaxon used the moment to grab the sack and run. He didn't look back. He ran as fast as he could, turning corners, slipping through the tight fleshy tunnels, feeling the ground shift below him. The creature followed, but slower this time. Wounded, angry, Jaxon burst into the main chamber and jumped into his ship, slamming the hatch shut. Breathing hard, he dropped the sack of parts on the floor and collapsed into the pilot chair. Sweat poured down his face. His heart felt like it might explode. He waited, listened. No sound. Maybe the creature was gone for now. He opened the sack and got to work. The battery cell was old but usable. The sensor array might help him scan the inside of the creature. The plasma cutter, that was now his only weapon. Hours passed. He connected wires, replaced fuses, cleaned out acid-damaged circuits. The ship's lights flickered, then stayed on. A low hum began to rise from the engine core. He smiled. Still got it. He whispered, but when he tried to test the engines, nothing. The beast's body was blocking the thrusters. He was stuck. No matter how powerful his engines were, he sat back and looked at the wall. The thick flesh pulsed gently, like breathing. Then, an idea came to him. What if I don't push through it? He said aloud. What if I make it move? If he could find the creature's nerve center, its brain or spinal core maybe, he could trigger a reaction, make it open its mouth, force it to spit him out. It was crazy. But crazy was better than waiting to be digested. Jaxon opened a drawer and pulled out wires, sensors and small drills. He would have to go deeper into the beast. Deeper than anyone had ever gone before. But he was ready. He looked at his ship, now partially working. Then he looked at the tunnel again. I'm coming for your brain, he said softly. He strapped on his gear and stepped out once more into the belly of the beast toward the unknown. Jaxon Reeve moved slowly through the tunnel, deeper into the alien creature. Each step felt heavier. The walls around him changed, less like flesh, more like muscle and thick cables. Strange blue veins pulsed softly, glowing from inside the skin. He knew what that meant. He was getting closer to the creature's nervous system. He checked his scanner. It was a small handheld device, half damaged, but it picked up faint electric signals in the walls. Life signals. He followed the strongest one. I just need to find where it thinks, he muttered, where it feels pain. The flashlight beam flicked left to right. The tunnel narrowed ahead. The walls were tighter, wet with thick fluid that dripped slowly to the floor. A low hum filled the air, like a sleeping engine. He stopped suddenly in front of him. A large pulsing wall blocked the way. It was different from the rest, thicker, darker, twitching every few seconds. He pressed the scanner against it. The signal spiked. This was it. The alien's nerve core. Not the brain, but maybe something close, a place where all signals met. Jaxon pulled out a wire, a sensor needle, and a power cable. He would try to send a signal electric shocks to see what kind of reaction the beast would give. He drilled carefully into the wall and placed the needle inside. The tunnel shook. The pulse in the wall got faster. He connected the wire to a small power unit and flipped the switch. A short shock flowed into the tissue. The alien screamed, not in sound but in motion. The tunnel around him flexed. The ground lifted beneath his feet. Fluid sprayed from the walls. He was thrown backward, hitting the tunnel wall hard. Alarms beeped on the scanner. Jaxon blinked, dazed. His suit was torn at the arm. Blood leaked from a small cut on his forehead, but he was alive. He looked at the wall. The needle was still in place. The signal was stronger now. It worked, he whispered. It felt that. He smiled, even while blood dripped down his cheek. If he could map out this nervous system, maybe he could control parts of the alien, make it move, make it open its mouth again, or at least, make it hurt enough to force it. Jaxon marked the spot and continued forward. Using the scanner to trace more nerve lines, he found 3 more points where the signal was strong, and marked each one. But then he saw something that stopped him cold. A human hand. It was dry, pale, reaching out from the wall, frozen in place, attached to a torn uniform. He stepped closer. It was a body half digested, stuck inside the alien's tissue. The face was barely visible, glassy-eyed, mouth open in a scream. The man wore a patch, a star pilot. Jaxon felt sick. He reached forward and gently pulled the pilot's belt off. There was a data card attached. He pocketed it and moved on, his face tense. This creature had eaten many people. He would not be one of them. Suddenly his scanner beeped. Rapid movement behind him. He turned fast, lifting the plasma cutter. The shadow creature from before was there. It had followed him again. Its skin twitched in the dim light. It didn't attack immediately. It just watched him. Jaxon slowly stepped back. "I don't want to fight you," he said. The creature tilted its head. Then it ran at him. Jaxon fired the plasma cutter, slicing the air. The light hit the tunnel wall and burned into the flesh. The creature dodged left and jumped at him again. He fell to the floor, wrestling with it. Its claws cut through part of his suit. He kicked it back and rolled away. Blood ran from his arm. He aimed the cutter and fired again. This time, it struck the creature's side. The thing screamed in a horrible, high-pitched sound and ran into the darkness. Jaxon breathed heavily, shaking. "I'm not dying here," he whispered. He stood up, slowly, and returned to the nerve core. He connected more wires, checking each signal. He formed a small network, 1 wire to the nerve, 1 to his power source, 1 back to the ship. This was his new plan. Controlled the alien from inside, back at his ship. Hours later, he finished linking the wires into the main system. The ship's AI was offline, but he used old code to create basic triggers. 1 wire connected to the creature's nerve would cause pain. Another might control a muscle. A third he hoped would make it move. Its mouth. He stared at the buttons. This was it. He pressed the first one. The ship shook. The tunnel outside screamed again. The alien thrashed. He pressed the second. The ship tilted slightly. Something big had moved outside, maybe a tentacle or muscle wall. Then he pressed the third button. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Frustrated, he pressed all 3 in a quick pattern. The ship's camera picked up something on the side monitor. Movement. The jaw of the creature was twitching. Jaxon leaned forward, eyes wide. "It's working," he said. But just as he smiled, something crashed into the outside of the ship. He looked up. The shadow creature had returned, and this time it had friends. 3 shapes moved in the tunnel. Claws, long arms, sharp teeth. Jaxon locked the hatch. He turned to the camera feed again. The alien jaw was slowly opening. He had 1 chance. Next time he pressed that button, he would fly out of this beast or die. Trying. The heartbeat of the alien creature was faster now. The tunnel walls shook every few seconds. Thick green fluids leaked from the ceiling and splashed onto Jaxon's ship. The air inside was hot, damp, and heavy. Jaxon Reeve worked quickly. Sweat rolled down his face as he connected wires and patched holes in the engine. He had no time left. The alien was reacting badly to the pain signals. Its body had started digesting everything inside it, including metal. The outer wall of his ship was melting slowly. The acid wasn't fast, but it was steady, burning through the hull 1 layer at a time. Jaxon wiped his hands and looked at the screen. The sensors were flickering. His nervous system controls were still working, but not for long. The creature was fighting back. Its own body was closing down the systems he'd tapped into. And outside, the 3 shadow creatures had returned. They scratched at the hatch. Sometimes they slammed against the ship, leaving bloody handprints. But they weren't rushing. They were waiting, watching, like they knew his time was almost up. Jaxon gritted his teeth and turned to the engine core. One of the plasma lines was cracked. Fuel was leaking. He wrapped it in a fire-resistant seal and tightened the valve. His hands were trembling, but he kept working. Every second counted. A voice in his head kept whispering, "You're inside a living stomach. You're fixing a broken ship surrounded by monsters. This is insane." But Jaxon ignored it. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a mechanic, but mechanics know how to survive. He climbed up to the control panel and checked the thrusters. The left side was still down, but the right engine was half functional. It might be enough for 1 strong push. He glanced at the monitor. The alien's mouth had opened slightly, just a crack, but it was there. A narrow path of light outside. Hope. Suddenly, something hit the ship hard. Jaxon fell sideways and hit the floor. Sparks flew from the wires. 1 screen shattered. The shadow creatures were getting bolder. They were trying to break in. Jaxon limped to the back and grabbed the plasma cutter. His left leg hurt badly, but he didn't care. He couldn't let them inside. He pressed the control signal again, shocking the alien's nerves. The ship shook violently outside. The mouth opened wider, but something else happened too. The digestive acid started flowing faster. It sprayed from the walls of the tunnel, covering the ground like a river. One of the shadow creatures screamed. The acid touched its leg, burning through it like fire. The creature collapsed, screeching. Jaxon stared at the camera feed. If the acid touched his engine, it was over. This was the final countdown. He pushed himself back into the pilot's seat, fingers flying over the controls. The engine core was hot, glowing red. Fuel was low. The ship's warning lights flashed red. Warning. Hull breach in 7 minutes. Jaxon didn't care. He locked onto the path between the alien's jaws. It was narrow. If he missed it by even a few feet, he'd crash into the flesh walls and be swallowed again. He didn't have full control, but he had just enough. He pressed the launch. Command. The engine sputtered, struggled, then screamed to life. The ship lurched forward, sliding over the pulsing floor. The shadow creatures ran beside the ship, claws dragging on the metal. One jumped on top, smashing its fists on the cockpit window. Jaxon fired the emergency shock pulse. The alien creature shook violently. The mouth opened even wider. Sunlight poured in. The way out was clear. The creature on the ship screamed as the acid reached it. It melted, bones cracking. Jaxon roared and pushed the throttle. The ship burst forward, flames flying from the side thruster. He dodged falling muscle walls, dodged acid sprays, dodged bone pieces from other ships. The mouth was closing again slowly, but closing that it was now or never. Jaxon shouted and hit the boost. The ship sped through the aliens, jaws just before they snapped shut. Outside stars, cold space, light, freedom. The ship spun out of control. One wing was torn off by the final push. The engine flared and died. The ship drifted, broken but free. Inside, Jaxon sat back, breathing hard. His body hurt. His hands were bleeding. His eyes were full of sweat and smoke. But he was alive. He had escaped, and somewhere behind him, the alien creature floated in space, bleeding from the inside. Silent. Jaxon looked at the dark screen in front of him. Only one small light was still blinking. Distress signal transmitting. He closed his eyes. The hard part was over, or so he thought. Jaxon Reeve floated in his seat, watching sparks fall from the broken ceiling of his ship. His hands were numb. The controls were dead. The engine had shut down completely after the escape. He could still feel the tremble in his bones from the final thrust that had pushed him through the alien's jaws, but he was out. Free. He looked out the cracked window. Behind him, the living creature drifted in space, massive and dark. It looked almost peaceful now, like a floating mountain, but Jaxon knew better. Inside that beast, dozens of ships were lost forever, along with the people who had flown them. Only he had escaped. But escape wasn't survival yet. His ship was dying. The lights blinked slowly. Warning systems kept buzzing, and the oxygen level was dropping. The hull was full of holes, and fuel was nearly gone. His body ached. His leg was swollen and cut. His face had dried blood from earlier. He was still alive, but only barely. He reached out and tapped the control panel. One tiny green light still blinked. Distress signal active. He whispered, "Come on, someone answer." Silence, no voice. No reply, just the empty sound of deep space. His ship was drifting without control. The right engine had exploded during the burst. The left side was burned. If no one found him soon, he'd run out of oxygen in a few hours. He leaned back, thinking. He had beaten a monster, rewired a living nervous system, escaped a trap no one else had survived, but now he might still die out here, quiet, forgotten. Jaxon looked around and saw the data card he took from the half-digested pilot inside the alien. He grabbed it and plugged it into the only working screen. The display flickered and came to life. A log played. A video, fuzzy and damaged, a pilot's voice. "If anyone finds this, the creature is real. It's alive. It's a predator. It eats ships, digests metal and static. We tried to fight it. Failed. No way out." The video froze. Jaxon stared at the screen. His heart beat faster. He reached under his seat and pulled out a small camera. He pressed record. "This is Jaxon Reeve," he said, voice low but steady. "Starship mechanic, solo operator. I escaped. I was inside the creature. Rewired its nervous system. Forced it to open its mouth. I got out. If you're seeing this, humans can survive it." He paused, then added, "We're smarter than they think." He ended the recording and uploaded it into the distress signal. Now if someone found the wreck, they'd know the truth. Suddenly, the radar beeped a blip, small, then growing bigger. Another blip, then a third. Jaxon leaned forward. "Please, not more monsters." He turned the external camera and there it was, a patrol ship, human-made, a white beacon blinking from its hull. Jaxon laughed weakly. "They found me." The radio crackled. "Unidentified vessel. This is patrol ship Vega 9. We received your distress call. Hold position, we're coming." He pressed the button, barely able to keep his hand steady. "This is Jaxon. I'm alive. Ship damaged. Need evac. Hang tight, Reeve. We're coming to dock." A few minutes later, a loud metallic clank echoed through his ship. The rescue latch connected. The side door opened, and bright light poured in. Two figures in armored suits rushed toward him. One knelt beside him, checking his pulse. The other looked around at the ship's destroyed interior. "You were inside that thing?" one asked. Jaxon smiled weakly. "Yeah, I fixed my ship inside a stomach." The rescue crew looked at each other in shock. As they helped him out, Jaxon turned for one last look at the alien in the distance. Still floating, still dangerous, but now, The galaxy would know it could be escaped, and only a human had done it. A day later, on board a medical ship, Jaxon lay in a clean bed, connected to tubes and machines. He stared at the ceiling as doctors checked his vitals. A commander walked in. Uniform crisp, eyes serious. "You're Jaxon Reeve." "Last I checked," he replied. The commander showed him a news display. Headlines were already spreading across the galaxy. "Human escapes, Star Eater alive. Mechanic reprograms alien from inside." Jaxon Reeve, the man who outsmarted a monster. Jaxon chuckled. "That's a bit dramatic." "You earned it," the commander said. "You've become important. I just wanted to fix my ship and go home." The commander paused, then handed him a small metal badge. "You're being transferred to Terran Research Command. They want your help. We've found traces of more creatures like that one." Jaxon looked at the badge, then back at the commander. "Let me guess, you want me to crawl inside another space monster?" The commander smiled eventually. Jaxon groaned and leaned back. "Next time, I'm charging triple." Jaxon Reeve stood quietly near a long window, staring out into deep space. He was no longer in a broken ship or trapped inside an alien's stomach. Now he was aboard TSS Sentinel, one of Earth's advanced science and rescue vessels. Clean walls, pure air, bright lights. Everything here was calm, modern, and safe. But Jaxon didn't feel calm. The images in his mind still played on repeat, acid dripping onto metal. The living tunnel walls pulsing like veins. Shadow creatures crawling through the darkness. He could still hear the heartbeat of the beast. He hadn't slept properly in days. Behind him, the door slid open. A woman in a blue science uniform walked in. Her name was Dr. Kara Lorne, head of xenobiological research. "You're awake early," she said gently. "Couldn't sleep," Jaxon replied. She walked up beside him and looked out the window. A large screen displayed the remains of the alien creature, now motionless, still floating far outside the ship. Its body had gone stiff. Its skin was cold and cracked, but it was still whole. No one dared get too close yet. Jaxon spoke quietly. "It's not dead, is it?" Kara hesitated. "We think it's in a deep shutdown state. No activity since you escaped," he sighed. "I hit it hard. Forced it open. I thought it would collapse. It didn't," she said. "But you did something no one thought was possible. You escaped it." From inside, Jaxon gave a small, tired smile. "That's what humans do. We fix things, even when we're not supposed to." Kara held up a datapad. "The analysis from your ship logs and scanner data, it's incredible. Your wiring, the signals you send through its nervous system, it's advanced, creative." "It was desperate," he replied. She looked at him with respect. "Still, it worked. You've become a symbol now." He turned to her, confused. "A symbol of what?" "Of defiance, survival, intelligence. All over the galaxy, alien species are talking about what happened. They've seen the footage. You made the impossible possible." He didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "I didn't do it for them. I just wanted to live." Kara nodded. "That's exactly why it matters." Later that day, conference room, broadcast center. Room was full of officers, scientists, and reporters from across the Terran systems. Everyone stared at the main screen, where Jaxon's ship footage played. The nervous system shocks, the creature's reaction, and finally, the escape burst. Gasps filled the room as the ship flew through the alien's jaws just seconds before they closed. Jaxon stood to one side, uncomfortable in a clean uniform someone gave him. He didn't like crowds. He preferred tools, machines, silence. But now, he was center stage. The Earth Defense Commander stood at the front. "This man," he said, pointing to Jaxon, "repaired a ship inside a living predator, escaped, survived, and gave us data that could help protect thousands of future ships. This is not just a story of luck, it's a story of what humans are made of." Reporters clapped. Some aliens from other species nodded slowly, still shocked. One question came from a Lendari diplomat. "Will the Terran forces hunt the other creatures?" The commander answered, "Not hunt, but we will prepare. We now know their biology can be disrupted. Thanks to Reeve's work, we have a chance." Jaxon stayed quiet. He wasn't interested in speeches. He just wanted rest night. Private quarters. Jaxon sat at a small desk. In front of him was a metal box. It had no label. It had been removed from the ship's wreckage and given back to him by security. He opened it. Inside, something moved. It was a piece of tissue, a small chunk of alien flesh. It was still alive, glowing faint blue, pulsing gently like it remembered his touch. He stared at it for a long time. He could destroy it, burn it, toss it into deep space. But he DY'd single quotes did instead. He placed it back into the box and sealed it carefully. "Not yet," he whispered. 1 week later, new dockyard, unknown location. New ship rested in dry dock, sleek, strong, designed for deep space exploration. It had one name painted on the side in black, the Reclaimer, and at the center of its design team, wearing a worn-out tool belt and holding a scanner, was Jaxon Reeve. He walked under the ship's shadow, checking panels, making notes. A young technician approached him. "Sir, you're building a ship to go back out there." Jaxon looked up. His eyes were calm. "Focused, not yet," he said. "But someday. There are more of those things out there. Someone has to be ready." The technician hesitated. "And if they catch you again?" Jaxon smiled. Then I'll fix another ship inside their stomach and break out twice as hard. Deep in the cold silence of space, a satellite spun slowly near the outer edge of Terran territory. It was small, forgotten, and covered in stardust. But suddenly, its screen came to life. A message was being broadcast across space stations, alien worlds, warships, colonies, and underground bunkers. The same transmission played everywhere. A man appeared on the screen, worn-out jacket, rough hands, a scar still healing on his forehead. Behind him dashed stars. It was Jaxon Reeve. He looked into the camera with tired, serious eyes. This message is for anyone listening, human or alien. It's not a warning, it's not a threat, it's the truth. He paused for a second, then he continued, there are creatures out there. Huge, silent, alive. They float through space and swallow ships whole. They don't care who you are, what planet you're from, or how powerful your engines are. To them, you're just food. I was one of those unlucky few who got caught. I was swallowed, digested, forgotten. His voice lowered, but I didn't die. I fought back. I repaired my ship inside the monster's belly. I found its nerves, shocked its brain, and made it scream. I made it open its mouth, and I escaped. Across the galaxy, people watched in silence, humans and aliens alike. I'm not a soldier, not a captain, I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. That's what I do. But now I've fixed something else, too. You fear. If I can survive that thing, then so can you. If it can bleed, it can be stopped. If it can be tricked, it can be beaten. It's not a god, it's not unbeatable, it's just a beast, a big one. The video zoomed out slightly. That behind Jaxon, the hull of his new ship could be seen, the Reclaimer, sleek and strong, built for deep space. I didn't escape just for myself. I escaped to tell you this. Never stop fighting. No matter how big the monster, no matter how dark the belly of the beast, you can still find a way out. Because we're human, and humans, we fix everything, even the impossible. He looked at the camera one last time. His voice was quiet, but firm. This is Jaxon Reeve, and I'm still out here, still building, still ready. If they come back, I'll be waiting. The screen faded to black, but the message had already spread. 3 days later, inside the Council of Galactic Alliance, high leaders of several species met in a circular chamber. Holograms hovered in the air, showing Jaxon's video, his ship, logs, nerve mapping data, and survival details. An insectoid ambassador clicked its mandibles. Humans are unpredictable. A reptilian warlord grunted. They always find a way to survive. A human general smiled. That's what makes us dangerous. Another screen blinked alive, showing distant signals from deep space. Strange life signs, patterns matching Jaxon's alien. But they weren't just from one location. There were dozens of them now, hundreds. The creatures were waking up, moving, spreading. Meanwhile, aboard the Reclaimer, Jaxon stood in the engine room staring at a sealed chamber. Inside, protected in glass, pulsed the small blue tissue from the alien creature he had escaped. Still alive, still beaten, a symbol. A reminder. He turned to his crew, scientists, engineers, young recruits. Status report, he said. A woman replied, engines ready, scanners online, armor double reinforced, we're cleared to launch. Jaxon nodded. He walked slowly to the command chair, sat down, and looked ahead. Stars stretched out in every direction. Danger, wonder, mystery. And somewhere out there, more monsters. But he wasn't afraid anymore. He pressed the launch command. The Reclaimer roared to life, and the mechanic who cheated death once was now hunting the stars.